Well, good morning. Happy Wednesday. It is Wednesday, August 28th, 2024. We've got a couple more days left in August, and then we're in September. Did you get rain last night? We got rain. I don't know. It was probably about maybe, 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock. We got some rain yesterday. That was exciting. And I was out this morning and it was sprinkling on me. So if you go outside, you'll notice that there's just clouds everywhere. And so I think we may get an early morning rain. In the early morning rain with the sunshine on my back, whatever that song is. Was that Glenn Campbell? I can't remember. That was back in the 60s or the 70s. Glenn Campbell ended up in Phoenix, retiring in Phoenix, and was very popular there. I don't know if he sang, but he was a fixture in the Phoenix area. Oh, man, for the last decades of his life. Was a Christian, went to a church there. I liked Glenn Campbell. I thought his music was really cool, really smooth music. Anyway, let's see. We don't have any birthdays today, and so we'll hold off on the birthdays until tomorrow. Then we've got some through the weekend, and it just looks like a London morning. If you ever have been in a place where there's lots of rain, sometimes you have these early morning raining days, which rarely happens here in Vail, but it happens elsewhere in the world. And that's what it feels like. It feels like I'm in London. Like I should wear, like if it was a little bit colder, I'd wear a London fog jacket and go out into the morning and brace the morning. But I know that it'll be gone by midday. So enjoy it while you can. Let's see. Anything else new? I don't think so. We are in 2 Kings in a series of stories telling us about how God is working through Elisha. And we just saw a miracle where Elisha fills up jars of oil, which is enough for the woman to pay off all her debts and then have some more. And now we're going to see another miracle of Elisha. So let's get into that. We're in 2 Kings chapter 4, and we'll begin reading at verse 8. One day Elisha went to Shunem, and a well-to-do woman was there who urged him to stay for a meal. So whenever he came by, he stopped there to eat. And she said to her husband, "I know that this man who often comes our way is a holy man of God. Let's make a small room on the roof and put in it a bed and a table, a chair and a lamp for him, and then he can stay there whenever he comes to us." And this, my friends, is just a huge blessing for Elisha. This is often what happens when you have a well-to-do family. These are the people that started the early church. They had house churches. They had money enough for their own needs, and then they were looking out for the needs of others. And she sees that he's a holy man of God, and she says, "Listen, he comes by all the time. He eats here, and he fills us with joy. Let's place a room on the roof, and he can stay there whenever he comes to town." And this may seem like it could be an imposition on this family. I don't think so. What I really think is that she likes Elisha's company. He comes with stories. He comes into town. He brings, life is much more enjoyable when you can experience it with other people. And we've gotten away from this in our American society. I think we are so connected to our TVs and our phones and our newspapers and our books and all that sort of thing that we forget that some of the most fulfilling times that we can spend with other people or in our lives is to spend with other people and to invite them into our house, to have a dinner with them, to do the things that just bring joy. So if you have the opportunity to bring in your neighbors or your friends or something like that for a meal, you should do that. Because this is truly where joy comes from. We've had our in-laws now in town for 3.5, 4 weeks, 3 weeks today, 3 weeks tomorrow, maybe it's 3 weeks tomorrow, and just having dinner with them. I went over there, had dinner with them last night, found out about their day, and it's life. I can imagine how lonely it would be to be a widow or a widower alone. I pray that that God fills all these people with joy and other people in their life, because I could see how it would be very, very lonely over time. And but this is a well-to-do family, and she convinces her husband, let's put a place on the roof. Why the roof? Well, for a couple things. One is probably a space that's not used that often. Two, it's protected a bit from the animals, and so it's a nice place. Three, it's separate from the house. When you come in, you don't want necessarily strangers in your house, but up on the roof is certainly a perfectly fine place. So we'll build a place from up on the roof. We'll put in a bed and a chair and a table and a lamp. And so whenever he comes into town, he can have a quiet space to himself. And the husband agrees, and so they do that. Verse 11, one day when Elisha came, he went up to the room and lay down there. He said to his servant Gehazi, call the Shunammite. So he called her, and she stood before him. And Elisha said to him, tell her, you have gone to all this trouble for us. Now what can be done for you? Can we speak on your behalf to the king or to the commander of the army? So Elisha wants to repay the debt. So he sent his servant. So maybe he brings his servant with him, or maybe the servant is stationed there. It's not clear. Certainly wouldn't be too surprising that Elisha has somebody with him. So he calls the Shunammite. And so the servant calls her. She stood before him. And Elisha said to him, tell her, you have gone to all this trouble for us. Now what can be done for you? Can we speak on your behalf? Now, what does this mean? Is it possible that he has to speak through an interpreter? Is that the reason why he has a servant? Or does he want to make it look more official? But basically, he's asking her what it is that he can do for her. Maybe we can, I know the king. Maybe I can speak on your behalf through the king or through the army. You have shown me great kindness, and I want this kindness to be paid back in measure upon measure, maybe even tenfold. Who knows? So he comes to her with, what do you want? And she replies, I have a home among my own people. What can be done for her? Elisha asked. Gehazi said, she has no son and her husband is old. Then Elisha said, call her. So he called her, and she stood in the doorway. About this time next year, Elisha said, you will hold a son in your arms. No, my lord, she objected. Please, man of God, don't mislead your servant. So as you may know, today with children, interesting throughout history, actually. As people, when people come into cities, the cost of having children is a little bit more. We've seen this at least in the last 500 years that people are less likely to have children in the city than in the country. If they live in the country, they're willing to have a lot more children. They need more children because you need more children to take care of the estate, if it were. And so you have lots and lots of children. But if you live in the city, then you want fewer and fewer children because it costs more to have children. This space is harder to come by in the city. It's more expensive to build in the city. To get food to feed your children is more expensive in the city. You can't just grow it on the farm like if you're in the country. And I saw recently an interview of a young millennial. He's about 23, or no, he's not a millennial. He's Gen Xer, Gen Zer. And he was talking about this. And he's done some research to see that this actually happens all throughout history, that it's not a recent thing. It just happens whenever you colonize and create cities. There's less people in the city. But back then, if you didn't have a child, it was very, very, very challenging, very, very difficult. Everybody wanted a child back then. Whether or not you lived in the city or the country, everybody wanted a child because children even if you got a child, it was no guarantee that the child would live, to 5 years old, 10 years old, and then be able to take care of you. So when you were older, and so you had many children, so that the odds were with you that you at least have one child by the time you became old. It was kind of a social security thing. But she has no child, and Elisha says, well, in a year from now, you're going to have a child. And she says, no, I can't have a child. Don't tease me like that. I'm old. My husband's old. We haven't had a child yet, and yet you're telling me that I'm going to have a child. Verse 17, but the woman became pregnant, and the next year, about the same time, she gave birth to a son, just as Elijah had told her. And the child grew, and one day he went out to the father who was with the reapers, and he said to his father, my head, my head. So she has a child, and it's a son, a wonderful bouncing baby boy, and he's growing up, and sometime, it doesn't say how old he is, but he's probably young. He's still with his father. I'm guessing, 5, 10 years old, something like that. And one day he has a headache, and he says, my head, my head. So something's going on. It's encephalitis. I don't know. We're at the end of August and of 2024, and there's this new disease that they've encountered that's a mosquito-borne encephalitis that's happening on the East Coast. And apparently it's pretty dangerous. It's transferred by mosquitoes. And who knows? Maybe that's what it is, or who knows what this disease is. But his head hurts. And there are a few diseases that attack the head. You make your head feel like a headache. And, they didn't have doctors back then. They didn't have nurses. They didn't have remedies. They didn't even know about disease. Just, my head hurts. My head hurts. It's got to be tough to be a parent back then, to have a child that's in pain and sickness. Child gets chicken pox or any sort of pox or measles or mumps, any of those childhood diseases that they had back then, no treatment. And you had to sit there and watch your child suffer. We have it pretty easy in modern day 21st century, right? We know about disease. We know where it comes from. We know how to prevent diseases. We know that a healthy lifestyle with lots of oxygen and air and sunlight is probably some of the best way that you can live your life. If you do get sick, we've got ways to treat it. We've got ways to manage the pain. We have so much today, but back then, it must have just been horrid to watch your son be sick. So his father told his servant, carry him to his mother. And after the servant had lifted him up and carried him to his mother, the boy sat on her lap until noon, and then he died. She went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and then shut the door and went out. So quick disease, whatever it is. Fortunately, he's not suffering a lot. Just very, very brief suffering. Makes me think like it's a swelling of the head. I think it may have been encephalitis. I don't know. But she sat in her lap until noon, and then he dies. And then she goes up and lays him on the bed of the man of God, and then shut the door and went out. Then she called her husband and said, please send me one of your servants and a donkey so I can go to the man of God quickly and return. Why go to him today? He asked. It's not the new moon or the Sabbath. That's all right, she said. She saddled the donkey and said to her servant, lead on, don't slow down for me unless I tell you. So she set out and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. When he saw her in the distance, the man of God said to his servant Gehazi, look, there's the Shunammite. Run to meet her and ask her, are you all right? Is your husband all right? Is your child all right? Everything is all right, she said. What? What? She doesn't say my son's died. She says everything's good. That's interesting that she doesn't bring up her dead son. But perhaps she's at peace with the fact that he's died. She knows that she had this time. It was a gift of God, and then God decided to take the child away. But whatever it is, it's almost like it is well with my soul, she says. I think of that song, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. The guy who wrote that was on a ship. He had just lost his only wife, well, his only wife. He lost his wife and his daughter or two daughters and had nothing. He had lost everything. And while he is on this ship, he pens the words to that song. And basically, it's a beautiful song. When peace like a river, da 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 da. Basically, what he pens is that you can experience death and be okay. It can be well with your soul if the people that you love die in the Lord and you are in the presence of the Almighty God. That even death cannot bring down your soul. And I think it takes a lot of maturity to get to that point. I think it's maybe you have to experience a lot of death in your life to get to that point. There are a lot of people, for when death comes, particularly the first few deaths of your life, they can be very, very bitter and angry. They can make you bitter and angry. Your soul can get disheartened. You question God. You question His goodness. All these things that happen. But as you age and mature, and you see the great, grand plan of an Almighty God and Creator, and realize that this life on earth is only temporary, and that it's just a blip in the whole expanse of time of being in the presence of God, that perhaps you can be like the guy who lost his wife and child and penned the words to the song, "It is well with my soul." And this appears to be where this lady is. She comes to him and she says, everything is all right, she says. Verse 27, when she reached the man of God at the mountain, she took hold of his feet. Gehazi came over to push her away, but the man of God said, "Leave her alone. She is in bitter distress, but the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me why." "Did I ask you for a son, my lord?" she said. "Didn't I tell you, don't raise my hopes?" Elisha said to Gehazi, "Tuck your cloak into your belt, take my staff in your hand, and run. Don't greet anyone you meet, and if anyone greets you, do not answer. Lay my staff on the boy's face." But the child's mother said, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So he got up and followed her. Gehazi went on ahead and laid the staff on the boy's face, but there was no sound or response. So Gehazi went back to meet Elisha and told him, "The boy has not awakened." So Elisha says, "Take my staff, go place it on the boy." So Gehazi, the servant, runs, doesn't talk to anybody, places the staff on the boy. Remember, this is upstairs in the room of the holy man, the house church, if you will. The boy is lying there on his bed, places the staff on his face, just as directed. Nothing happens. And so he returns back to Elisha and says, "The boy has not awakened." Now, if you're a normal holy man, you'd say, well, I guess that didn't work. But this isn't a normal holy man. Elisha somehow had had God speak to him in a whisper, almost like at the mountain, and said, this is not right. Maybe I need to go personally or whatever. So verse 32, when Elisha reached the house, there was the boy lying dead on his couch. He went in, shut the door on the two of them, and prayed to the Lord. Then he got on the bed and lay on the boy, mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hands. As he stretched himself out on him, the boy's body grew warm. Elisha turned away and walked back and forth in the room, and then got on the bed and stretched out on him once more. The boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. So, where have you seen this type of story before? Well, it was Elijah, right? We know that the widow of Zarephath, her boy died after giving Elijah the last bit of crumbs of oil and bread. And Elijah was able to raise the boy, was able to God raised him from the dead, but through Elijah. Well, now we have Elisha, very similar story. He's dead, lying in the house. Different technique, although lying on him, breathing into him, and the boy comes back to life. Would it have been mouth-to-mouth resuscitation? I don't know. Did the boy have a heart attack? I don't know. But whatever it is, he brings the boy back to life. And then what happens? Elisha summoned Gehazi and said, this is verse 36, call the Shunammite. And he did. And when she came, he said, take your son. She came in, fell at his feet, and bowed to the ground. Then she took her son and went out. So imagine her joy of seeing her son come back to life. Though they thought he was dead, he came back to life. Elisha lay on him through the power of God, brought him back to life. And she must have been ecstatic, as the widow of Zarephath was. So this is another miracle of Elisha. I can't imagine how challenging and difficult it would have been to live at that time. But the thing is that Elisha was a man of God. And that's what's evident in all of these stories, is that he was not just a simple man. He was a prophet, and God was able to do amazing things through the prophet. And he took risks. He knew that he could bring the boy back to life. And so if he went himself and lay on the boy, he knew that God would do that. And that's a man of faith. That's a huge man of faith. And the ways of God are mysterious. And we don't understand them. We know now, all the scientific explanations of how the body works and what doesn't work. And you have to get the coroner to proclaim death and all those sort of things. But back then, God did amazing things through Elisha and Elijah too. This is just amazing. We live in a world that's all very scientific, but we have an amazing God. We have a God that does great things and can do great things. And we can call on him in prayer at any time and say, God, plead with him. Like the widow and the persistent widow and the judge, please, 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 please. And God is able to do great things. Even in this world, there's no difference between 2,600 years ago and today, or 3,000 years ago and today. God can do amazing things even today. And he's looking for faithful people to ask him, to plead with him, to do amazing things. All right, let's see. Do we want to get to the next story? I don't think so. Let's see what time it is. Yeah, we'll close it there. And we'll pick up the story tomorrow. Gracious God, thank you for this day. Thank you for the rain and the clouds. Keep us in your grace until we meet again. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, let's look over here. Oh, you got sprinkles. Good morning, good morning. We got sprinkles. Oh, yes. In case any was interested, what is this? The cocdiscipleship.org Horatio Gates. Oh, this is, must be from the story yesterday. The story behind the hymn as well. Oh, yeah. Horatio Gates Spafford was born. Tragedy. 4-year-old son, Horatio, died suddenly. Then only a year later, massive fire stating, that day 300 people lost their lives. 2 years later, Spafford decided his family should take a holiday in England. While crossing the Atlantic on the steep ship, their vessel was struck by an iron sailing ship. 226 people lost their lives. All 4 of Horatio Spafford's daughters. So it was more than one daughter. Okay. Can you imagine how horrible that is? But they survived, they rescued, set off once again, reunited with his wife. Captain summoned him on the bridge. Pointing to the charts, he explained they were then passing over the very spot where the ship had sunk. After Anna was rescued, one of the ministers traveling with the surviving group remembered hearing Anna say, God gave me 4 daughters. Now they have taken away from me someone I will understand. Naturally, Anna was ever devastated, but she testified that her grief She'd been conscious following that deep to give birth to 3 more children, but she and Horatio were not spared. Even more sadness. Their only son, Horatio, died. Yeah. The original manuscript of the Spafford's hymn has only 4 verses, but later another verse was added. Horatio Spafford died of malaria on the 16th of October, 1888. Yeah, so I remember hearing this story, but basically, in the midst of tragedy and death, there are times when God comes in and rescues our soul and lets our soul be lifted up to him. All right. Thank you for sharing that, Suzanne. All right. So I guess anything else? No, I think that's it. Thank you so much for joining me. And I pray God's richest blessings on your day. And enjoy wherever you are. And we'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.